Aish to the Parnes and the Tayva family, Louis Nishmas Yisrael Yitzchak, and Yaakov Pinchas, and Shams and Alia, and the Shiur should be a schus before Shlema for Bryndel, Bas Yehudot, Ariela, before Shlema so Shachar Yisrael. Okay, it's been a while since before Yontiv. We're finishing the Perek, the Maimer on Tayvas, on page Kuf Pei. Page Kuf Pei. We're up to Aish Dalet, on page Kuf Pei, Aish Dalet. At the end of the Maimer, which is the next page, there's going to be sort of there'll be like a sikum of the different strategies of not just contending with Tayvas and the Yetzirah, but using the Tayvas as a way of serving the Kodesh Baruch Hu. We're up to Dalet. Sometimes a person is in a matzav where the nisayon is so strong. And all of the strategies that we learned in this Maimer, all the strategies to think and to feel, are not working well, are not working so well. And even the korach of this week, the korach of Netzach, even the korach of being menatzeach is very weak. So what is the final frontier? That's what we're going to talk about here today at the end of this Maimer. It doesn't mean it's the last resort, because it's the end and it's the beginning. When a person sees that all the strategies just don't seem to be working, and he has to enter into the world of emunah pshuta, tefillah, davening, she'inyanam lahachzik chazak b'Hashem Yisborach atzmo. Because all of the machshavas and all of the hargoshes are wonderful, and are very effective, but sometimes nothing works except for the person to enter very, very deeply into emunah pshuta and to davening. Lahachzik b'Hashem Yisborach atzmo, to hold on to HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Not all the different machshavas, not all the different strategies, the thoughts, the feelings, but to hold on to HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Ki lefamim page kuspel, ki lefamim yesh nisayon gadol ma'od. Because sometimes the nisayon is very great. And he can't think of all these other things. These are all gewaldige things, but he can't come to himself. At that moment of the nisayon, he's overwhelmed, and he can't think straight. He's completely confused. Magish mebulbal ba'ofen nora. Then he has to return to the most basic place of his Avoda. He has to return to the headquarters of who he is, to the beginning of who he is. To bind himself, to connect himself to Kodesh Baruch Hu, and to speak to him mitoch emunah pshuta. The emunah pshuta in the simplest way. Dainu, which means sheyizger is atzmo, to go someplace by himself, to run someplace by himself, and close himself in v'yifne el Hashem Yisborach, and turn to Hashem Yisborach v'yaschel adaber ito, and to speak to him, to his b'ydus. Yisapel lifnei Hashem Yisborach es kol ha'kaishi she'over love, and to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to describe to him, and to talk to Hashem about about this kaishi, this nisayon that he feels that he's slipping into, that he doesn't have the presence of mind, the kaiches to overcome. Yivakesh es Ezrasa, and to ask for Hashem's help. V'tzarch lefaret es hargeshoysev. This is all that we're learning in his Avodah Chabura, and he has to specify. He has to go very, very clearly into the details of what he's feeling, and how afraid he is that he's going to slip. He should say, Ovi Shabashamayim. To come to this simple clarity of my Father, I know that you're here with me in this difficulty. And I very much want to be able to pass this test. Lama bin Yisai. And I want to give you this simcha. I want to give you this nachas. And I know that if I'm successful, that I'll be closer to you than before. But I don't feel that I have the strength. I need the koach and the das in order to be matzliach. To say diburim like this, very simple and clear words, to spell things out, or Kodesh Baruch Hu, to speak in such a way. Obviously, each person says whatever he wants. The ikr is to hold on, b'chol mechir, at any cost, as a kesher in Hashem Yisbarach, not to let go, but to hold on to that kesher with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ayidei hadibur, by speaking, not just by thinking, but by saying it, by speaking. Ayidei hadibur. That's what we're learning about in the Yosef Atzadik Chabur, not to let go. Well, from the word lahatir, matir, asur, not to let go, not to be untied. And in this situation, the only way to stay attached is with this emunah habrura, with simple and clear emunah. Shrakhu ha'emes. V'iti tamid b'chol ha'matzav. That only Hashem is the truth, and Hashem is here with me in every matzav. V'tov l'dabra an l'kudas hayichud shabaso inyan. And it's good if the person can talk about the nakuda of yichud in that particular inyan of the nisayin, for instance. So he brings one of the less dangerous nisyanis, but nisayin of achila. L'mashal, imboy love Tayva's achila. So the person is overcome with the Tayva of eating. I know that everything is you. And any hana, as we learned earlier, and any hana is only your light, it's only you. Now how is it that I have fallen? And I'm being drawn by this Tayva. Hashem, please help me to go out of this. Because even though I don't feel really myself the koiches to get out, nevertheless, I know. And inside of myself, even though I don't consciously feel this, but I believe that deep within me, everything is just your or. And to repeat over and over, I know, Rabbi Shalom, that you're here with me, in this difficulty, and I know that only you are the or ha'amiti. Only you are the true light. And all these nisyonis are nothing. And to strengthen yourself more and more. By entering into this recognition of Hashem's yichud, of everything being Hashem. B'derech shel dibur im Hashem, by speaking to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, b'dibur or b'kasha, speaking to him and asking him, ad sheyargish hakala b'nisayin, until you feel that the nisayin is beginning to loosen up, to lighten up. The test is getting lighter. V'yargish etavaso akol nisayin acher maschilim l'hiraga, and you begin to feel the nisayin is getting softer, that things are calming down. Let's just do the two notes. If at that moment of this difficulty that you're having, you can go to some other room, and to go by yourself, that's the best. But if you can't, if you're among people and it's not possible, then you have to still sort of disappear while being there. But to speak to Hashem, not in a way that is going to cause others to see or to notice. There are many eitzes, how to do this. Not to be embarrassed from other people. So in a way that's not embarrassing, in a way that people don't know, they don't hear you. You could be whispering, open up a sefer and whisper, and it looks like you're just learning. Or you close your eyes as if you've fallen asleep. But the ikr is not to be embarrassed and not to lose chayi hanetzach for this busha of a moment. But as soon as you feel this nisayin, find a way. The person has to find a way to speak to Hashem. And if the nisayin is that he feels such a darkness, then a margish as Hashem is baruch imo klal, ad kidei kach that he doesn't feel Hashem with him at all. Then force yourself to talk to Hashem about the darkness that you're feeling and how you don't feel His presence at all. Hashem, for instance, to say, Hashem, Avi Shabashamayim, Ani Yodeh Sha'ati Iti. I know that you're with me. Va'av she'ani margish ezeh ka'is, and even though I don't feel this right now, ma'oid koshali, and it's very hard for me. Ani Yadesh is Irak Nisayin. I know, at least intellectually, I know in my head that this is a Nisayin. Shatem Estatu, and you're hiding. You're here. But you're really here. Until you say this over and over until you begin to feel that He's there. And even though you don't feel yet that you can overcome this, but it'll quiet down your soul because you've already allowed some of Hashem's light to enter. There was a Yerushalmi last night that was here, who I know for many, many years. He runs a yeshiva, and he shared with me what happened with one of his students, one of his former students, right before Pesach. It's a very involved story from a young man who's had a very, very difficult, he's already 31, 32, and he's had a very difficult life. And things reached a point where he went to the roof of his building to jump off. It just happened before Pesach. He was going to kill himself. And at the last minute, he was standing. He told this rabbi of his, that at the last minute he he walked away, and he sat down on something up there, and he said that he just started to cry out to Hashem, and he said that he took out his phone and he started to say Tillim, and he said that he felt that David HaMelech was next to him, and he sat over there on this roof with David HaMelech next to him, and he said that he realized that he had never davened ever before in his life, even though he grew up his whole life davening. He never really davened. That's what this was just telling me a few hours ago, and that he poured his heart out, and he was davening and davening and davening, and he's from a family of 11 children, and he told me like 6 of them are not from. Only one of them is married. They're impoverished. It's a terrible story. And he said that he sat on this roof for 4 hours. He said with David HaMelech next to him, sitting on the roof. David HaMelech was next to him, and he went through the whole Tillim. I think that's what he told me. Most of it he went through Tillim, and he came back to himself. And he went to speak to the Rabbi to talk to him. They got him some help with a therapist and work on things. But the Rabbi said that within those 2 weeks, 3 or 4 of his siblings who were going through terrible tzaros themselves had yeshuvas. Because while he was davening for himself, he started davening for his sisters and his brothers. And this one got engaged, and the other one had this, and this one had that. And he said, these fellows like 31 or 32 years old told him that he always heard a million talks growing up about the koach of tefillah, and it always bothered him. Like, he says, I don't know, I daven, I don't see anything happening. But he said that for the first time in my life, right, I was about to kill myself, and I sat down to daven. He said, for the first time in my life, I realized that I had never really davened before. This is my first davening. I'm 30 years old. It's my first davening. And it worked. As he said, it was my first davening. I really davened. And he said, it saved my life. And he started singing Yeshua. And so I said to the Rabbi last night, this fellow's been, he's not married. So I said, I hope he remembered to daven for himself too. Also together. He said he did, and he said that just before the Rabbi said that just before he came to America, which was 2 days ago, that there was a very nice shidduch that was suggested for him, and that the family said yes. Right? And this is all from when he was standing by the edge of the building looking down. It was kimat over, and at the last minute, he just said, that he went to that place of the not anything advanced or fancy or some eitzah. He just went to that place of Avi, my father, and he said, this is what he was just telling this to me. So it's interesting because he called me up this. I know him for many years. He's a good guy. I mean, he's a character, but he's a good guy. And he said to me, he has to speak to me today. He says he wants to give me some chizuk. So that when they say that usually that he wants to give me some chizuk means he's coming for a check. And how I'm going to get the chizuk from that, meaning that he'll be mazaking me with the mitzvah of helping him. That's usually what that means. I mean, I'm doing this for many years. He says, he says, I said, okay, so I told him I could use some chizuk, so come. I had my book ready with the check. And he told me this ma'aseh. And I said, really, what you told me is Gvaldi chizuk. He gave me a good check also. He needs it. It's not for himself, he's helping people. But this Gvaldi chizuk, this story. And, he went through. He was telling me the details about how his brother was. His brother was accused of some crime. It was a crazy accusation. He said his brother's a tzaddik, and he was accused of something. And they don't have any money for lawyers, and they didn't know what to do. And after he did this davening, the next day, the brother comes in front of the judge, and the judge takes out this file, and he starts looking at the papers. And he said he was there. The brother wrote, and he said, Aish, the judge says, Shtiyot. He turns to the page, goes, Shtiyot, and he gave him a fine of 500 shekel. That was the whole thing. He said, not dollars, 500 shekel, and he said, just stay away from that place, whatever. He was accused of shoplifting or something. He said, never did it, but he said, don't go back. He said, don't go back to that store. He says, I'm not going to, for a month, he can't go back to the store for a month. He said, I'm not going back to the rest of my life. And this all from the davening by the brother. And the other thing is that the brother was poiled with this tefillah, and he said that he had David HaMelech who was sitting the whole time next to him. They were together the whole time. The koch of tefillah, but he said, I always heard about it, but I never knew it. It was true. So a person, we could think that we've davened, and how come we don't see without davening? Again, not that the yesod of tefillah is that we get what we want. I'm not going to go through that shmooze. Everybody knows that shmooze. But sof goes off. It's very, very powerful. But a person goes whole life and he davens 3 times a day, and he never daven. We learned in the his brother's chabur, in the parak that we just finished the parak on emes, on being honest with Hashem. Rabbi Nachman, he brought there from Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman said the person has to daven his whole life. They should say one dibur that's true. Because if to daven, you should be zoich to say one thing, that's to talk one time that's in a way that's honest to Hashem. One dibur that's true. And if the person that in this matzav doesn't let go of Hashem, he keeps on talking. It's almost lahav the elf alfa Avdallah. It's like like when we were kids, there was always some movie about people on a plane, and like the pilot and the co-pilot or something died, and it's like some guy that's got to land the plane. That was like that was a popular theme in movies. And there's some guy that that doesn't have a driver license or something, and he's got 200 people on the plane. He's got to bring this plane in for a landing, and he's got the chevra and the control tower say, okay, we're gonna talk you through this. Just stay with us, right? Stay with us, and lahav the $1,000. What Hashem Baruch says is just stay with me, stay with me, and you'll land. I'll help you land, but don't let go. Just stay with me. Stay with me the whole time, and you'll land. I'll talk you through it, and you'll talk you. We'll talk together through it. V'atfila elov l'rega kol zman hanisoin yinatzech bevada. Yinatzech bevada. What does it mean yinatzech bevada? Look at footnote shin. Gamsach modli zoher. Person has to be very careful. Lahachshiv kol tzas es garbus shematzliach. Now, how do you measure hatzlacha? That's a very, very big mistake that people make, and we've spoken about that over the years thousands of times. How does one measure hatzlacha? Hatzlacha doesn't mean that you're completely finished necessarily. It could be that there was some in the nisayon, there was some slight, some partial success. You would have done something much worse, and you did something much less. And there are different ways of measuring hatzlacha and to appreciate whatever the hatzlacha was. And therefore, it's very important. Even if you were not matzliach completely, but you were matzliach at least partially, it's also chashuv. And you should be machshav the partial hatzlacha as well. Any his garbus at that moment. Any netzach at that moment, any nitzachin at that moment, even if it's a little bit of a nitzachin, shova k'mo meya pamim b'zman acher, is equal to 100 times the hatzlacha at a regular time. And if you put your karcha and don't have this thought that it's only considered to be hatzlacha if I'm completely, absolutely 1,000% hatzlacha. It's not. Whatever hatzlacha, any hatzlacha. Even if you already had in that Indian already, there's been some failure, but to continue and to try as much as you can to stay with the control tower and to go through. We always talk about it, to think about Yosef Atzadik. As we know, and on his madrega, Yosef Atzadik was nichshol when he was with the wife of Potiphar. With that Maisa, we know Chazal tell us that on his madrega, he didn't touch her, but he himself, there was some zera that left him, and for him that was a terrible, terrible catastrophe. It was a terrible catastrophe that he couldn't control himself. Avlos Aish. So what could have happened at that moment was once Yosef Atzadik was unraveling, once he was untied, so to speak, and there was already a michshol because something did happen to him. So what many people do would be to say, all right, so it's for fun. I fell. I lost my perfect record. I fell. But Yosef Atzadik was, even though in his madrega he was nichshol mahar, he wasn't misyayish. Vehechzik b'ne'emanis laHashem Yisbarach, and he held on to the Kodesh Baruch Hu, lahamshich l'sgaber, to keep whatever. Okay, that happened. Masha hayah, ma'ida hava. So, afilu shel l'chayre kvar nichshol ma'at. Even though l'chayre on his madrega, certainly it happened that nichshol ma'at, that he already was nichshol on some level. L'kvar ein shleimus. So it was no longer a perfect record. Ein shleimus. The nitzachon gomer. There's no shleimus. There's no complete nitzachon. Even though Yaakov Avinu, his father, had a perfect record, Chazal say, Yaakov never had such a mirshal ever in his life. But Yaakov is not the Merkava, is not the Sharish of the Midah of Yesod. Tavke Yosef, who was Mazgab in that matzah. He's the Merkava of the Midah of Yesod. It's a tremendous limud from that. That it wasn't about perfection. It was about in that matzah that he was in, not letting go. That's the Midah of Yesod. Ki ein lechapes shleimus. Because the Avodah of a Jew is not lechapes shleimus, even though you can hear many, many talks like that, and we heard many things like that from teachers and rabbis and so on. But ein lechapes shleimus. It's not shleimus. It's the lesamitz. Everybody knows that very often that Indian of shleimus and that that need for shleimus, which oftentimes is just a matter of gaiva, of the ego, that Indian of shleimus oftentimes brings a person down. That need for perfection, or it very often doesn't. Not only doesn't it work, it's the opposite. The ikar vayda v'yid is lesamitz b'kol yichalta. That's all. To try your hardest. Lesamitz b'kol yichalta. It's not about that I was perfect. I had a perfect record. It's not perfect. It's lesamitz b'kol yichalta. And not to be sad, but to feel simcha with every little bit that you were matzliach, even if you were only partially successful with this. That's why we see that there are midas in the midah of Netzach. There's Chesed shebenetzach, Gvura shebenetzach, Tiferes shebenetzach, and so on. Whatever little bit of nitzachon, the person should be besimcha, even with a little bit of nitzachon, even with a little bit of netzach. Okay, so to summarize this mimer, is hey sikum Darkecha hamilchama. The mimer zeh is bar b'siyata d'shmaya Darkecha Avoda neflaim. In this mimer, we learned some wonderful drachim in Avodah. There's garba al yodam al hanisyanis, shkol echad oiver b'chayev. To be misgaber by using these to overcome the nisyanis that we have in life. Obviously, it's important to review all of these things. There's not just a limit of. We're not learning this sefer to even though we do learn new things, but it's the ikka here is not to gain some intellectual insight. It's practically how to apply the Derech HaBashem day by day in our lives. That's the whole purpose of this sefer b'yom Darkecha. So b'mayim hazeh is baru b'siyata d'shmaya. Of course, the hard thing is shebishas nisayin hanisayin ha'adam b'derech klal milbulbal. At the time of nisayin, a person is usually very, very mixed up. I've spoken about this many times over the years. Any of you familiar with Dr. Sarno? You're familiar with it, right? I mean, he was nifted a few years ago. He was very old. So I'm not going to go through that whole fascinating sugya, even though I have personal experience and very, very unbelievable. Both my wife and myself with hatzlacha using that mahalach. But it's a way of thinking. There are many doctors that poo-poo it, but there are millions of people apparently who have been helped by it. Hashem's Baruch made us in such a way where our mind has tremendous kaiches. And it's I see that you all heard of it, and I think I read someplace like next to Tanakh is the best-selling book in the world. His first book. There are a couple of others. Afterwards, he has a whole sheet. There's a whole mahalach. When I was going through some suffering with terrible pain that I had in my shoulder, so I went with a friend of mine who had his sorrow with his back, and we went to, in Borough Park. There's a shiur that's given once a month. We went to the shiur by his Talmud Chacham that made a personal connection with Dr. Sarno, so what he had something with his wife.
Rabbi Katz.
What?
Rabbi Katz.
Yeah. So we went. We made an appointment. I told you when I called him up to make this appointment. I mean, it's a packed room. There's the mechitza, men and women, and so when I called him up, I asked if I can come. He's in the conversation. I know his brother from Far Rockaway. It's a shul over there. So, and I remember him also. He used to come to the shul. They used to take turns. The brothers all Talmidei Chacham. They would come take turns after the father was nifter, and he told me I have more chassidim than the square Rebbe. That's what he told me. So he's very humble. He says it's not his own. He went to Dr. Sarno. I'll tell you in a second why I'm telling this. He went to Dr. Sarno, and he was able to get an appointment with him quite a while ago, some years ago. And he said, "Look, there are a lot of people in my community that are suffering from these things, and it would be helpful if maybe I could sit with you for an hour or two, and you could, give me a personal shiur, a chabur." I mean, he read the book and everything, and he said that his Rabbi Katz, I recall, said that his wife, I don't know if it was him or his wife, they were in a wheelchair. They hadn't walked in a long time, and she was fine. So Dr. Sarno worked with him and spent some time with him. And then Rabbi Katz gives, I don't know if he's still doing it. I mean, this was already maybe 4 years ago when I went. And I had already been working with this. my wife had success with this, using the book, and but I wanted to go because it's important to go for like Chazara and just some pointers, and he gives the shiurs together with Chazals and with all kinds of interesting Chazal. It's a whole chavaya. So, standing among them, and he even told a story there about a certain big Rosh Hashiva in Muncie who had been in a wheelchair and that they worked with this method, and that this Rosh Hashiva in Muncie, within a month that he was walking again, and somebody called out from the women's section, it's not true, it was within 2 weeks, it was my father, because that was the Rosh Hashiva from Muncie. So the reason I'm telling this to you is because there's this whole book, the first book, where he explains the whole, how he was a very chashuv, I think neurologist, I guess, I don't know what you're familiar with this, Steve, with his method? Yeah, so he was a chashuv in the 50s. He was a chashuv doctor, and what he was seeing was that a lot of the back pain, that there were no signs of physical injury, lower back, whatever he was looking at. The kid said, in the book he explains this whole mahalach, but you know when you're in that matzav and you're feeling that, so what are you supposed to do? Like chazah this whole book, you grab the book and take that. So he has this. There's like this one page that there are just a tamsis of the main things to think about b'shas ma'aseh, and he said the rest of the book really you could ignore. The rest of the book was just to explain, how I came to this and what these, but you have to memorize. You have to memorize these points. And I'm telling you, b'didi, myself, that sometimes when there's something particularly stressful that I hear about, which is almost every day, but there's like in Yonim, so I start to feel right away a shot of pain in my shoulder, a horrible shot of pain, and then I close my eyes and I ask Hashem to help me, and I review. I say, I don't just think. I say over the points. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dal, Tayva. I say them over and I repeat them a few times, and it works. This is what I do. Not once or twice. You can say that. This is how I live. It's not just a happens or coincidence. And b'shas ma'aseh, when I was going through the pain, it was so clear that the shurish of it was emotional, because one morning I woke up and I had it on the other shoulder as well. And the doctor was ready, I was already scheduled to go for surgery. And I called it off at the last minute. And I said, I'm going to work on this, because my wife had an issue with her back years earlier, where it was so bad she couldn't walk. She had to carry her into the doctor. Mamash. My son had to carry her into the doctor. She couldn't walk. And also, and she worked with this mahalach, and also, it wasn't a month, it was 2 weeks. Maybe not even 2 weeks. So what's difficult, what he's saying here is that the problem is that shibashas and nisayin adam b'derech klal mibulbal. That usually when you're going through a nisayin, or in this case, the marshal of physical pain, you're feeling this terrible pain, you're just in a horrible place. You're confused, and you can't remember a whole book, and a million aces. You're just not in that place in your mind, and you're just not in that place to go there. Ma'at harbe. It's really even a little bit. It's hard. And it's very hard at that moment to remember what you learned, what you read. Therefore, when it comes to Avodah Hashem, this thing that we're learning about the Nisyanis and all of Avodah Hashem, that's one of the most wonderful things about this sefer. When it comes to Avodah Hashem, you have to summarize. You have to write down. You have to have little tzetlach, pieces of paper in your life, or a little notebook where you write down, and you have it. and it's yours, and you can take it out. If you're a person that has a very strong mind that you're able to have those few points, or if not, or even if you do have that, so then you have it written down, and it's something that you have with you as part of your life that goes with you everywhere.
Is that your sitter, or is that your own personal tefillas?
No, I'm not talking about your sitter. I'm talking about
Writing your own personal.
These things that these points that we're just gonna go over right now. Yisakim Bivus Mahim Adrachim Anogim Elav. The drachim, like we learned the whole mimer here, whatever it is, like 20 pages. You learn a whole mimer to review it. He's going to give a little bit of a review now in a second, but to review it and to write down those points that resonated with you and that you work with, and to have it with you, and to keep it with you. Nowadays it's very easy because everybody has a phone. So you could have a whole section on your phone just for these inyanim. Well, you mean it for Shabbos, so you have to. But to always have this. Ma hem hadrachim hanogim elav. What are the drachim hanogim elav? Hanogim elav. Often shehem yubruim v'chayim etzod, that they should be clear, summarized. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, not the whole spiel. Because at the time of the Nisayin, you can't go through the whole Torah. You have to have the points. But not sikum, so here's just a short sikum. But this isn't enough. But don't just use my sikum. Go over the parak, he says, and write your own sikum. To look it over, and not just to take it out when you're having the Nisayin. But every now and then to go over these, to go over this. Kodesh chai b'zman nisayin, so that when you're in a nisayin, it should be alive. This piece of paper, this it should be, the sikum should be chai, should be alive. Gimel matzav miyesh l'adam. There are 3 matzavim that a person has. Aleph. When your mind and your emotions are b'chol taikif, are very strong, in other words, you're really in a good place, you're balabas over yourself, intellectually, emotionally, that's one matzav. Beis, k'shemagish chalash, when you're feeling weak. Gimel, k'shemagish she'en l'koyach v'chiyas klal, when you feel no koyach, no chiyas at all. So matzav aleph. So if you're in that first matzav where you're in a strong place, you're having an Nisayin, but you're in a strong place with Seichel and Hergish. So Kshemigia Tayva, when you have a Tayva, Yizbonin Beroa Shalom, you mizbonin to contemplate the Ra in this, the Kamashal Kedai Lekachta, and how it's not Kedai to indulge in this. And you get to think over why is it Ra, why is it not Kedai? Besides that the Torah says this, or to try to even remember what the Torah says, or what Halacha says, or what you learned about, something, if you're in a good place to think about these things. And since you're in a good place, to try to stay focused on Ahavas Hashem and all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done for you, v'chulei v'chulei. And to go in ba'arichas hamachshava, to think about it at length. That's matzav aleph. Matzav beis, when you're weak, ya'ir v'ya'ir ba'atzmo cheshek lezgaber. To try to be ma'ir within yourself, a cheshek to lezgaber, to be mezgaber to this nisayin. Ad sheyagish yesh lekoch v'rotzon lezgaber. Until you begin to feel a rotzen, more of a will and more willpower and strength to be mezgaber. Yesh lo chiyas mehes gabers. Zayidei sheyagish ad libo as achas mehes beinenuyos sheizbaru la'el. And the way to do that is by taking to heart and trying to review one of the hisbonenuyos, one of the methods of hisbonenus that we were learning in the parak to go over. I'm not going to go over them now, but to go over, to have them again, to write them, to go over one of these. Because you're still, even though you're weak, this person is still has the ability to go over these. And each person should try to understand which hisbonenus, which type of hisbonenus is with the beres elav, speaks to him, and to focus on that way of thinking, of that particular meditation or hisbonenus that speaks to him. Yisakim oisa heite, and you should have always a summary of this. Shetia muchana eslo la'es pekuda, that you should have ready. It should be with you la'es pekuda when there's a need for it. La'eru b'miyad cheshek li'ilachem, to be ma'eru within yourself, this cheshek, to be in the war, to fight. V'la'asaysay hachalash yomer gibor ani, to be able to, even though you feel weak, but to be able to come back to feeling a sense of strength. Hachalash yomer gibor ani. And again, it's important to say these things, to try to be someplace, to go somewhere where you could talk about it. All of these things are always together with davening, of course. Together with davening, asking Hashem for help. But to talk about these things. That's the second matzav. And matzav gimel, yikones ledaber and Hashem Yisbarach believe itur. When you have absolutely no chiyas, you're just very, very, very out of it, but you don't want to go through this. You want to be menatzeach. So even if there's a little bit of enough of wanting to at least do this, you come to davar Hashem Yisbarach, as we just learned today, to go into that place of speaking, crying out to Hashem with emunah pshut, just pashtus and tmimus, believe itur, and not to let go. V'yasik by ubedibur imo, to hold on to Kodesh Baruch Hu, ubedibur imo, and continue speaking to him. Bli lestakel mahu margish, without thinking about what you're feeling, whether you have strength, you don't have strength, and to think about any of those things. Just to keep on talking, to keep on davening, and diburim of amunah, and pshitus, and so on, ad shi netzech, until you're able to be minatzech. Okay, so we should all try to do that, to be matzliach. The next mimer we're not going to start now, but we'll begin next week in Mitzvah Lakavit Shavuos. We're going to learn the next mimer on Tayva. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? What do we think about when we're learning Torah? Hashem will start next.
Books.